There is a spiritual key that unlocks multiplication. It's not what you're thinking, and you can apply it every day. But before you try to guess what it is, pause for a moment, breathe, think about everything you've been seeking. More peace, more prosperity, more clarity, more purpose. Think about the times you did everything right. You prayed, you believed, you tried to maintain positive thoughts, and yet it felt like nothing was happening. It's as if life has the emergency brake on, no matter how much you accelerate. Have you ever felt that? The truth is, there is a spiritual force that governs the flow of multiplication, and most people have never learned to align with it. Not because they aren't good enough, but because they were taught to look in the wrong place. They believe they need to convince God to bless them, when in reality, God has never stopped multiplying. It is we who block the flow. What I am about to reveal to you is not a ritual nor a magic formula. It is a spiritual insight that completely changes the way you see your own life. When you understand this and begin to practice it, you will notice something almost unbelievable. The very same circumstances that once seemed stuck begin to move. The doors that were closed unlock, the right people appear, and the opportunities that seemed distant start to draw near to you as if they had always been there, just waiting for the moment to be seen. This is the key Jesus meant when he said, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move,' and it will move." This is not a pretty metaphor. It is a spiritual instruction, a vibrational password. The mustard seed isn't about the size of faith, it's about its quality. It's the kind of faith that doesn't doubt because it has already understood that the power to multiply is not in the future, nor in something outside of us. It is in the now. Emmett Fox used to say that everything you think, feel, and believe turns into spiritual matter, that you are the creator of your own mental environment, and that what is on the outside is merely a reflection of what you hold on the inside. And this is precisely where the secret that almost no one understands lies. True prayer is not asking. It is aligning. It is tuning in to what already exists in abundance. And this isn't philosophy, it's law. The same law that causes a seed to multiply into hundreds of fruits when it finds the right soil. You are that soil. Your thoughts, your emotions, your words, all of this is the ground in which divine multiplication happens. When you learn to tend to this ground, growth is inevitable. But perhaps now you're thinking, if it's that simple, why haven't I seen it happen in my life yet? It's because simple is not the same as easy. The human mind is accustomed to complicating what is natural. It doubts, it compares, it fears, and it is in this space that the spiritual flow is interrupted. It's as if God is always pouring out abundance, but we are holding up an umbrella. What we will explore together in this video is exactly how to close that umbrella, how to make space for life to flow again. And the most incredible part is that you won't have to wait for months to feel it. When this key is put into practice, something shifts immediately. Not because the world outside transforms, but because you reconnect to the source from which everything comes. And before I continue, let me tell you something important. There is material that delves deeper into this exact practice. It will help you apply these spiritual principles of manifestation and multiplication in a guided way every single day. If you truly want to live what we are about to discuss, click the link in the first pinned comment and start today. It's a simple yet profoundly transformative step. Now turn your attention inward, because what you are about to hear could forever change the way you see God's action in your life. Imagine your mind is like a lens. Everything you experience passes through it. If the lens is smudged by fear, haste, or guilt, the divine light trying to pass through it becomes distorted. You see scarcity where there is abundance. You see delay where there is perfect timing. You see obstacles where there are lessons. But when you clean this lens, everything reorganizes. and what seemed impossible begins to happen naturally. The spiritual key to multiplication is cleaning this lens every day. It's waking up and, before chasing after what's missing, remembering that the universe is already complete. Multiplication begins when you attune yourself to the vibration of gratitude, even before you see results. When you give thanks for what has not yet arrived, you are not deluding yourself. You are declaring to reality, "I have already received." And it is in that instant that faith ceases to be a hope and becomes a creative force. Stay with me until the end, because the final revelation is the most powerful of all, the one that shows how to transform any area of your life into a fertile field for divine manifestation. But before we get there, remember, the power to multiply is not something you ask God for. It is something you allow Him to do through you. Multiplication begins in the unseen. Everything that manifests in the material world is just an echo of something born in the spirit. When you understand this, you begin to see that what truly moves the world are not hurried actions, but aligned intentions. This is why so many people work hard, strive, sacrifice, and still feel like they are swimming against the tide. Effort without alignment is like rowing with the boat facing the wrong way. Emmett Fox said that God is mind, and the mind of God is always creating. What we call reality is nothing more than the materialization of dominant thoughts and beliefs. This means that what you keep alive within you, the images, the emotions, the words you repeat, is at every moment asking to take form. The invisible is the mold, the visible is the print. So, if you want God to multiply something in your life, the first step is not to ask for more, but to change the mold. Every morning when you awaken, the universe is waiting for a command. Not a desperate command, but a vibrational one. And you give this command by the way you feel and by what you believe is possible. That's why true prayer doesn't just happen when you close your eyes. It happens all the time, with what you think, with what you say, with what you allow yourself to feel. When you wake up and remember all that is still lacking, you reaffirm absence. But when you awaken and acknowledge that even if not everything is perfect, there is something divine sustaining every detail, you activate the law of multiplication. Because gratitude is the code that opens the vault of abundance. And perhaps this sounds too simple, but observe, Jesus didn't say to beg for blessings in desperation. He said, "Believe that you have already received it." This phrase is one of the most powerful and most ignored teachings in the spiritual history of humanity. To believe you have already received is to act, think, and feel as someone who is already whole. It is to position yourself in the field of manifestation. But what really happens when you live this way? Something extraordinary. You begin to attract experiences that vibrate at the same frequency as your consciousness. If your consciousness is soaked in lack, scarcity, and fear, everything around you confirms it. But if your inner world begins to breathe abundance, if you maintain a deep sense of trust, the spiritual field responds. People, ideas, resources, everything starts to move in your direction. And make no mistake, this isn't positive thinking. Positive thinking is painting over a cracked wall without fixing the foundation. Manifestation is the transformation of the bedrock. It's reprogramming the energy of who you believe you are. Because God doesn't respond to what you say with words, He responds to what you vibrate. Therefore, the spiritual key to multiplication is not asking, it is becoming. Becoming the very vibration of what you desire. If you want prosperity, you cannot vibrate as someone begging for it, but as someone who is already prosperous, even if the money hasn't arrived yet. If you want love, you cannot vibrate neediness. You must vibrate wholeness. If you want peace, you cannot nurture anger and resentment and expect a miracle. Multiplication begins when your vibration becomes compatible with what you wish to see flourish. And there is something profound here. What you want most from life is already available, but it's tuned to a different frequency. Just as you can't listen to a radio station if you're on the wrong frequency, you can't experience abundance if you are vibrating in scarcity. Faith is the adjustment of that tuning. Therefore, if you want to see God multiply everything in your life, start with your consciousness. Align your inner self every day. It's not about performing grand rituals, but about small, conscious gestures. Waking up and declaring, "Today, God acts through me. Today, I am the channel of divine abundance." Even if it feels like just a phrase at first, repeat it until you feel it. Because the feeling is the seal. Emotion is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. When you deeply feel something, the universe understands it as a command. This is why people who live in complaint remain stuck in the same situations. They are manifesting without realizing it. Life doesn't understand irony, it understands frequency. And here is a point that changes everything. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. And what you are on a vibrational level is defined by what you hold in focus. Everything you observe with emotion expands. That is the law. If you look at problems with anger, you give them energy. But if you look at them with faith, you transform the frequency. You cease to be a victim and become a co-creator. Do you remember that passage where Jesus multiplies the loaves and fishes? Many see it as an isolated miracle, but what happened there was the activation of this very same spiritual key. Before the multiplication, he does something simple and powerful. He looks up and gives thanks. He gives thanks before the result. He gives thanks for what still seems insufficient, and it is in that instant that the little becomes abundance. Gratitude transforms the vibration of matter. Now imagine applying this to your life. Imagine looking at the little you have, a job that isn't ideal, a simple bank account, a relationship under construction, and instead of complaining, giving deep thanks for every sign of growth. It is at that moment that the energy shifts. Life begins to test you less and cooperate more. Because the universe understands that you have finally learned the secret. To multiply is an act of consciousness. And if you want to make this practice a natural part of your routine, there is content that guides you in this process of daily alignment. It helps you apply the vibration of living faith and real manifestation in a simple and powerful way. The link is in the first pinned comment. Just click and start using this key every day. Returning to our theme, when you begin to live in alignment, you notice something curious. The hurry disappears. You don't need to chase after what is already yours by divine right. You simply act from inspiration. And inspired action is completely different from action driven by fear. When you act out of fear, you wear yourself out. When you act from faith, you flow. This is how the miracle happens in daily life. Not suddenly, but naturally. Things start to work out. The right conversations emerge, unforeseen events turn into pathways, and then you understand it wasn't luck, it was attunement. But there is a subtle obstacle that blocks multiplication for many people: spiritual self-sabotage. They believe in God, but they doubt themselves. They pray with faith, but carry guilt, shame, and a sense of unworthiness. They think they don't deserve abundance. And when you believe you don't deserve it, you close the doors to the flow. That is why one of the most transformative practices is forgiveness. To forgive is not to say the other person was right. It is to set your energy free. When you hold a grudge, you vibrate emotional scarcity, and anything that vibrates scarcity impedes multiplication. Forgiveness clears the ground. It makes space for the new. When you release the weight of the past, you feel something almost physical. Your energy begins to circulate again. And it is in this lightness that God acts more swiftly. Because the Spirit moves where there is space. And here is the deepest part. To multiply is not just to receive more money, more love, or more opportunities. To multiply is to expand your consciousness until you realize that all of this is an expression of a single thing, the divine presence in motion. Multiplication is the reflection of your union with God. When you remember who you are, the universe responds like a perfect mirror. Now think for a moment, what do you truly want to see multiplied in your life? What do you want God to expand through you? The answer is your map. And the journey begins within. Everything you need is already available. The only question is, are you vibrating at its frequency? Because the spiritual field does not judge, it only responds. You can start now. Close your eyes for a second and tell yourself, I am a channel of divine multiplication. Everything I touch prospers. Everything I do flourishes. Everything I desire with love is realized because the power of God acts through me. Allow yourself to feel this truth, not as an empty affirmation, but as a state of being. And watch. Things will begin to move subtly at first, but clearly enough for you to know something has awakened. Multiplication is the sign that you have returned to your center. And if this video is touching something in you, if it makes sense in your heart, then leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This is not just a gesture, it is a way to continue receiving messages that keep your consciousness awake. Because the more people vibrate on this frequency, the more the entire world changes. And remember, the spiritual key to multiplication is not in asking for more, but in allowing more. Allowing God to do through you what He has always wanted, to create, to expand, to multiply. The final revelation is this: you are not trying to attract abundance. You are abundance trying to remember who it is. And when you awaken to this truth, everything begins to blossom, naturally, miraculously multiplied. Multiplication happens when you understand that the divine is not outside, looking at you from a distance, measuring how much you deserve. It is within, wanting to express itself through you. Everything you call a miracle is, in fact, the nature of God flowing freely when you stop resisting. Think about it. How many times have you asked for something, prayed, waited, and nothing seemed to happen? And then, in a moment when you finally let go, stopped fighting, something simply worked out. That is not a coincidence. It is the instant when human control surrenders to divine intelligence. It is in that space that multiplication happens, when you trust to the point of stopping the pushing and starting to allow. And allowing is not giving up. It is trusting so much that the need to prove, to rush, to justify, simply vanishes. It is knowing that what is yours is already on its way and that God's timing is always the right time. That is the vibration that multiplies. It is the vibration of surrender, of spiritual rest. The mind wants to rush, but the spirit knows it has already arrived. That is why manifestation doesn't happen through haste, but through certainty. Haste comes from fear. Certainty comes from faith. And when you live by faith, every small gesture becomes a seed of multiplication. Faith is not an idea. It is a living energy. It is a field vibrating around you, shaping situations, creating invisible bridges. When you keep your mind focused on good, on love, and on trust, the entire universe reorganizes to serve that purpose. You can test this. Each day, choose to bless what you have. When looking at your bills, say, I am grateful because this proves there is flow in my life. When looking at your job, even if it's difficult, declare, this is where God is training me to manifest more. When looking at your home, your health, the people around you, see the divine in every detail. This simple act changes your vibration from lack to abundance. And here is something few realize. What you call reality is just a delayed reflection of what you have already emitted before. This means that if you start vibrating differently today, the reflection will inevitably change. But it requires patience, just as a seed doesn't sprout on the same day it's planted. Faith is the time between planting and blooming. It is the space where the unseen is working in your favor, even when nothing seems to be happening. When you trust, the unseen works. When you doubt, the process pauses. Therefore, the secret lies in remaining steadfast, even when the result hasn't arrived yet. And it's not about denying reality, it's about remembering that there is a higher reality, a force that transcends circumstances. That is the force Jesus called the kingdom of God. And he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." This means multiplication doesn't come from the outside, it comes from the inside out. You are the channel, God is the source. When the channel is clear, the source flows without obstruction. When the channel is clogged with fear, guilt, or doubt, the flow weakens. So every day your task is simple: clear the channel, return to your center. Choose to think, feel, and act from faith, not from fear. And this isn't done only in moments of tranquility. It is when life gets tough, when it feels like everything is falling apart, that you prove how much you trust. Multiplication happens first in the desert. It is there that you learn to turn stones into bread, scarcity into a lesson, pain into wisdom. And when you understand this, scarcity stops frightening you, because you know it is just the soil in which abundance will flourish. Life tests your faith not to punish you, but to strengthen you. The universe wants to know if you are ready to sustain what you ask for. When you remain firm, even without seeing, something changes within you. Doubt dissolves, fear goes silent, and an unshakable peace emerges. It is in this state that multiplication occurs. You don't need to chase after it. You become the fertile field itself, where everything grows. And if you want to experience this consciously, step by step, there is material prepared with this intention. It will guide you to apply this spiritual key in your daily life, with simple yet profoundly transformative practices. The link is in the first pinned comment. Click and see what this transformation can do for you. Now, remember this. The power to multiply is not a prize that God gives to a select few. It is the nature of everything that is alive. Everything that is in harmony with the divine grows, flourishes, expands. The tree does not struggle to bear fruit. It simply stays connected to its roots. So do you. When you stay connected to the source, multiplication is inevitable. It doesn't matter what has happened until now. God is not limited by your past. He doesn't need ideal circumstances to act. He just needs you to make space. Today can be the beginning of something completely new, and all you need to do is decide to trust. Decide to believe that there is an invisible order working silently in your favor. Decide that from now on you will think, speak, and act as someone who has already received. Close your eyes and declare, "God, I allow your power to manifest through me. May all that is good, just, and perfect multiply in my life. I trust, I give thanks, I receive." Feel it. Breathe. Because in this instant, multiplication has already begun. And if this message touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you will continue to receive words that keep your faith lit and your spirit awake. Share this video with someone you know who needs to hear this. Because when one consciousness awakens, the entire world brightifies a little more. You are not waiting for the miracle. You are the miracle happening, and all God wants is for you to realize this and to allow Him to multiply through you all that is good, beautiful, and true.